Well, welcome to all those who are with us. Um, just some history, probably about 23, 24, 25 years ago, Rabbi White and I decided to do the Seder supper together. We'd have it down in our church hall. We'd have, we did all the cooking. We made, we had great matzo ball soup. In fact, Rabbi White once asked one of my people who was doing that if she was Jewish. She said, "I'm black, who knows?" But it was just wonderful. So, and in his honor, I have the yarmulke that he gave me years ago. I only wear it for Seder, special weddings. Uh, but I'm just very honored we can do this, and I'm just very, very blessed that Sam could be with us so we can continue this legacy. So thank you for joining us. I know we're taping this, so all those who see this later on, this is a great way, especially for the Catholics and Christians on board tonight, to realize the rootedness we have in all the Jewish roots in Christianity, which a lot of the stuff that you'll see read tonight will make sense because you will see that's part of what we use in our faith tradition as Christians and as Catholics. So with that, I'm just very happy to get started. Rabbi Debbie's going to be next.
Sure. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be with you again for this Seder. It's hard for Father Kelly and I not to talk about Rabbi White because he was just kind of huge in our lives. But he was my mentor, and actually reading this script that he developed, if I start crying, it's because Harold's spirit is with me, and I miss him. But I also wanted to introduce you to my colleague, Reverend Samantha Gonzalez Block, who is the Christian leader at the Interfaith Families Project, where we are. She is a Presbyterian minister, hails from her own interfaith background, and she and her husband are raising their son as interfaith. So absolutely wonderful addition to our team and to this evening's festivities. Having done all that, let's get the ball rolling. And I get to do that. So the very first thing that we are told that we must know about God, and the very first thing that God tells us that we are to know, is this: I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of Egypt. God tells us this before commanding us not to steal and not to kill, before commanding us to observe the Sabbath day and not to worship other gods.
Yet this reminder is itself a commandment. It's the first commandment. It sounds like a simple description, but it is a commandment. What does it command us?
It commands us to know for all time that our God is a God of freedom, that the commandments God offers us are gifts, not burdens. God wants us to understand that nothing is more central to the divine purpose than our freedom, and that freedom depends on just law.
Tonight we are, all of us, from the youngest to the oldest, colleagues in the celebration of freedom.
At the same time, we are partners in a Seder. Seder means order. We might have chosen to celebrate and remember our liberation with noisy carnivals. Others have. But we have been taught something different. The exodus from Egypt was only the first step in our liberation. It was a step that God helped us take, and that God pointed us in the right direction, as if telling us, the rest is up to you. And here are my commandments as signposts along the way. And here once a year is Passover, a time to reenact the Exodus, to go back to the beginning and start the journey to freedom again. And maybe, just maybe, not to get lost this time. And if you don't get lost, then you know what lies in store.
And we do, for we know that if we start at the beginning and follow the signs, then next year, Jerusalem, the Jerusalem of our yearning, freedom's prize.
The Seder. Welcome to the Seder. Tonight we observe a festival of most ancient origin and most modern significance. For more than 3,000 years, Jews have gathered to retell the tale of their deliverance from Egyptian bondage. From those times until these, freedom-seeking people in nations all over the world have identified with and are inspired by the story of the Exodus.
Tonight, we participate in the Seder as members of two communities, Black and Jewish, two communities that have known the struggle for freedom. We were oppressed, we were enslaved. Our task tonight is to remember that history. We dreamed dreams of equality, of justice, of peace. Tonight, we meet together to refresh those dreams.
Many of the symbols we use, the words we read, and the songs we sing tonight will be strange to some gathered here. But the message of the songs and the symbols will be familiar. The message is freedom. We are together because we know that justice and freedom are indivisible. May this message ring through the hills and valleys of our land and across the seas.
In the 30s in Germany, when they came for the communists, I did not speak up because I was not a communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't speak up because I was Protestant. Then they came for me. By that time, there was no one left to speak up. This is from Pastor Martin Niemöller. Now, in the presence of loved ones and friends, old and new, before the emblems of festive rejoicing, we gather for a sacred celebration, linking and bonding the past with the future. We heed once again the divine call to service. Living the story is told for all people, whose shining conclusion is yet to unfold. We gather to observe Passover, as it is written in Exodus 12. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread, for this very day I brought your hosts out of Egypt. You shall observe this day throughout your generations as a practice for all times. We assemble to fulfill that commandment. Remember the day on which you went forth from Egypt, from the house of bondage, and how God freed you with a mighty hand. Exodus chapter 13:3. To celebrate Seder is not merely to recall the Exodus, it is to recapture it. We are taught that in every generation, all of us are obliged to regard ourselves as if we ourselves went forth from the land of Egypt. So it is not enough to remember, we must ourselves enter the story, and through prayer and song and symbol and ceremony, make it our own. We must feel the lash and feel the hope that defeats its pain. We must feel the water at our feet and the fresh breeze of freedom on our face. As we do, then our hearts will be open to all today who still live in Pharaoh's domain, and to all those for whom the Exodus has yet happened. This great gift of freedom was given to us. These miracles were done for us. For the waters parted, let us merit what was given by becoming agents of freedom for God's children who now dwell in darkness.
We begin by lighting candles. As we light these candles, we rededicate ourselves to keeping the burning flame of justice alive and to learn how to open a matchbox. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, lehadlik ner shel yom tov. We praise you, God, sovereign of existence, who commands us to kindle the holiday lights. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that burns in the heart's secret places. Blessed is the heart with the strength to stop its beating for honor's sake. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. From Hannah Senesh, a poet and freedom fighter killed by the Nazis. The first cup. We will be blessing our wine 4 times. The first cup, the cup of history. The use of 4 cups is based on a biblical verse in Exodus 6, which uses 4 different verbs to describe God's deliverance of the children of Israel. V'chotzeti, I will bring you out. V'hitzalti, I will save you. V'ga'alti, I will redeem you. V'lakachti, I will take you. These 4 cups were each imbued with their own distinct significance. The first cup, also called Kos Kiddush, the cup of sanctification, begins both the ritual and the historical aspects that are woven together for the Seder service.
We praise you, God, sovereign of existence. You have called us for service from among the peoples and have hallowed our lives with commandments. In love, thou hast given us Sabbath for rest, festivals for rejoicing, seasons of celebration, the festival of Matzot, the time of our freedom, a commemoration of the Exodus from Egypt. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who gave us this joyous heritage and who sanctifies the Sabbath, Israel, and the festivals.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Praised are you, God, sovereign of existence, who creates the fruit of the vine. The Hayinu prayer is a prayer of thanks we offer to God for the opportunity to celebrate new beginnings and joyous occasions. It's traditionally said at the beginning of festivals, as well as on certain auspicious occasions, such as eating the fruits of a new harvest or reaching the milestones of life. Tonight we recite this blessing in gratitude for this opportunity to come together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechiyanu v'ki'imanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. We praise you, God, sovereign of existence, who has kept us in life, sustained us, and brought us to this festive season.
The Passover festival of freedom was grafted onto a yet more ancient holiday, the holiday that marked the spring harvest. Spring is a time of rebirth and renewal. The snows of winter have melted. Once again, the bare trees have begun to bud. Soon the flowers will bloom, filling the air with their scent and gentling our senses with their beauty. In the Jewish tradition, we read from the Song of Songs at this time of year. Hear this from the Song of Songs, chapter 2. Arise, my beloved, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past. Flowers appear on the earth. The time of singing is here. The song of the dove is heard in our land.
The fresh greens of spring serve a special purpose at this point in our Seder. As we dip them, these herbs, the karpas, in salt water, mine is over here, a symbol of the tears of slavery. We remember all those who still suffer under the yoke of oppression. Say the prayer, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri ha'adamah. Praised are you, Adonai, sovereign of existence, who creates the fruit of the earth.
There are on this plate 3 pieces of matzah. The bread of is one of them. The bread of poverty and affliction. We break the middle matzah and conceal one half as the alpha koman, a word from Greek origin meaning a kind of dessert. Why do we break the matzah in half? Because the story we are about to tell is a story of how people were broken by slavery. We begin with the break, but we do not conclude our Seder until the halves are reunited. The story we are about to tell is a story of how a broken people was made whole by freedom. Later on, we will share this afikomen as in the days of old, when the Passover offering was shared at the service in Jerusalem. Tonight, that sharing has special meaning for all over the world. The sharing of bread forms a bond of fellowship. For the Jewish people, the hope of freedom is symbolized by the prayer next year in Jerusalem. The Jerusalem for whose peace we yearn is a geographic place. We pray fervently for peace among all its peoples. For the Jerusalem for which we pray also represents a time of peace and justice throughout all of God's world. Even if we were gathered this evening in the place we call Jerusalem, we would still pray for a time without hate, without violence, without cruelty, without poverty. The words we are now about to speak have been part of the Seder service ever since its beginning. We take the matzah in our hand and we invite those who hunger to share this meager bread with us. Through much of our history, we knew the names of those who were hungry, of our neighbors down on the luck, left behind, left out, locked out. Today, many of us live distant from the zones of crushing hunger, of homelessness, of poverty. Those in need often are nameless to us, faceless, but all of us are required to reach out a hand to those in need, to share our blessings. And this is a quote by Tess Sinis from Abby's house. It makes it easier to accept the existence of the homeless if you believe they have no families, no relatives, no friends. When you find out they do have people who don't want them, it's worse. No wonder they are incoherent. It hurts them too much to face reality.
Halachma anya. This is the bread of affliction that our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are needy join our Passover feast. This year we are here. Next year may we be in Jerusalem. This year we are slaves. Next year may we be free men and women.
Avadim Hayinu. Once we were slaves, but now we are free. Avadim Hayinu, Hayinu, Atab Nechorim, Nechorim, Avadim Hayinu, Atab Nechorim, Avadim Hayinu, Atata B'nechorim B'nechorim, Atata B'nechorim B'nechorim, Avadim Hayinu, Hayinu, Ata B'nechorim B'nechorim, Avadim Hayinu, Ata B'nechorim, Avadim Hayinu, Atata B'nechorim B'nechorim, Atata B'nechorim B'nechorim.
Avadim Hayinu, we were slaves. We are slaves. How can we still say this year we are slaves? We are slaves because yesterday our people were in slavery and memory makes yesterday real for us. We are slaves because in today's world there remain people in chains and no one can be truly free while others are in chains. We are slaves because freedom means more than broken chains. Where there is poverty and hunger and homelessness, there is no freedom. Where there is prejudice and bigotry and discrimination, there is no freedom. Where there is violence and torture and war, there is no freedom. Where each of us is less than he or she might be, we are not yet free. Where any of us fail to use our freedom to make others free, we are not yet free. If these things are so, who among us can say that he or she is free? Therefore, when we say that this year we are slaves, but that next year we will be free, we make a pledge. It is the same pledge we made last year and the year before that, and we will make it next year too. For the road to freedom is not an easy road, and we will not stop until all can join in freedom's song.
Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more burning churches, no more burning churches, no more burning churches over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more weeping, no more weeping, no more weeping over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Thank you, Christina. I can just close my eyes when you're singing. I can just imagine when you were singing that, we were here at St. Martin's at our church hall, and Rabbi White would just have his eyes closed and just lean back and just take all of it in. Started to give you tears. Matzah of hope. This is the matzah of hope. We are brothers and sisters in memory. We are brothers and sisters in sorrow. But most of all, we are brothers and sisters in hope. Wherever a Jew or an African American is still oppressed or still put down, wherever we are cut off from our past, barred from our future, we share a vision of hope. The only enslavement we acknowledge is this: we are prisoners of hope. This is a quote from the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. These deprivations are part of a person's emotional and intellectual life. They determine whether he is fulfilled as a human being. When you are written out of history as a people, when you are given no choice but to accept the majority of culture, you are denied an aspect of your own identity. We must affirm that every human life is a reflection of divinity, and every act of injustice mars and defaces the image of God in us.
We come now to the 4 questions the tradition has proposed to us. The Seder table was and is a time to ask and discuss, a time to search for answers, to ask without fear. That too is a mark of our freedom. So let these 4 questions of the tradition serve as examples, and let them serve as the beginning of our discussions. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot.
3.
So, why is this night different from all other nights? On all other nights, we eat either leavened bread or matzah. Why on this night only matzah? On all other nights, we eat all kinds of herbs. Why on this night do we especially eat bitter herbs? On all other nights, we do not dip herbs at all. Why on this night do we dip them twice? On all other nights, we either eat sitting up or reclining. Why on this night do we all recline? Where do we find the answers? The answers are in the story itself. And now let us ask new questions, our own questions, as we begin to tell the story of the liberation of the Jewish people from their enslavement in Egypt. Why is this night different from all other nights? Because on all other nights, we eat alone in our communities, in our own homes, while tonight we have crossed boundaries to eat with one another. Because on all other nights, we recite our personal histories to ourselves, while tonight we are listening to each other's stories. Because on all other nights, we focus on our particular identity, while tonight we are conscious of our universal humanity. Because on all other nights we accept our separateness, while tonight we acknowledge our incompleteness and seek to build bridges across the gaps that have kept us apart.
The telling of the story of the Exodus. We were slaves unto Pharaoh in Egypt, and God brought us forth with a mighty hand. Had not the Holy One, blessed is God's name, to deliver our people from Egypt, then we, our children, and our children's children would still be enslaved. Therefore, even if all of us were wise, all of us people of understanding, all of us learned of the Torah, it will still be our obligation to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt. Moreover, whoever searches deeply into this meaning is praiseworthy. We have known physical bondage and spiritual servitude. We have been subject to social degradation. For in the eyes of others, we were a subject people, Arameans. In Deuteronomy 26:5, we read, "My father was a fugitive Aramean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there, and there became a great and populous nation." A great nation means it was distinguished in character and tradition. In Egypt, the Israelites, our people, did not alter their way of life, their convictions, their names, their heritage, their faith, their language. By the virtue of this self-respect and dignity, they merited redemption.
True redemption comes with acceptance of oneself and identification with one's people. In a world of anxiety, hatred, prejudice, anger, and pain, we keep before us the vision of the day when all people shall be free, free to be themselves and free to accept each other. I took your ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, from across the river, and I led them into the land of Canaan. And I increased their descendants, and I gave them Isaac and Rebekah. And to Isaac and Rebekah, I gave Jacob. When Jacob and his children went down to Egypt, Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph had emerged with power over the land of Egypt. There was a famine in all the lands, but in the land of Egypt, there was bread. And Pharaoh said to the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph. Whatever he tells you, you shall do." And all the world came to Joseph in Egypt. Now, after Joseph died and all his brothers and all that generation, a new king arose from Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, "Look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us. Let us then deal shrewdly with them, lest they increase, and in the event of war, join our enemies in fighting against us and gain ascendancy over the country." So they set taskmasters over them, which forced labor, and they built garrison cities for Pharaoh, Pithom and Ramesses. The Egyptians embittered their lives with harsh labor at mortar and brick and in all sorts of work in the fields. But the more they were oppressed, the more they increased and spread out, so that the Egyptians came to despise and dread the Israelites. So Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, "Every boy that is born shall be thrown in the Nile, but let every girl live." We cried unto Adonai, the God of our ancestors, and God heeded our plights, our misery, and our oppression. As we recall God's promise of redemption, we remember that in every generation and in every age, some rise up to plot our destruction, even in our own time.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, we down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. We need not always weep or mourn. Let my people go. And weave these slavery chains forlorn. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, we down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Oh, let us all from bondage flee. Let my people go. And soon may all this world be free. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, we down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
Exodus 12, verse 42. The time the Israelites remained in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of the 430th year, to the very day, all the host of God departed from the land of Egypt. That same night is God's watch night for the children of Israel throughout all generations.
Makot Mitzrayim, the plagues of Egypt. When Moses asked Pharaoh to free his people and Pharaoh refused, God visited 10 plagues upon the Egyptians. We now recite those plagues. As each is named, we pour a drop of wine from our cup of joy. The tradition explains this custom by reminding us that our own joy is diminished in the face of the pain of others. Even though the plagues are an essential element in the saga that we celebrate, we derive no pleasure from them. We do not gloat at the suffering they caused. Dam, blood, tzvardea, frogs, kinim, lice, arov, wild beasts, dever, light, shechin, boils, barad, hail, arbe, locusts, choshech, darkness, makat bechorot, the slaying of the firstborn.
They taught God is urgent about justice, for upon justice the world depends. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Injustice to any people is a threat to justice of all people. I will not remain silent in the face of injustice.
Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu Hotzianu, Hotzianu, mi Mitzrayim, Hotzianu, mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu Natan, Natan Lanu, Natan Lanu et Hashabat, Natan Lanu et Hashabat, Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu Natan, Natan Lanu, Natan Lanu et HaTorah, Natan Lanu et HaTorah, Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
I'm glad we had that.
Again.
Exactly. What does it mean there would not have been enough? Surely no single of these would have been enough. It means to celebrate each step toward freedom as if it were enough, then to start out on the next step. It means that if we reject each step because it's not the whole liberation, we will never be able to achieve the whole liberation. It means to sing each verse as if it were the whole song, to sing the next verse. This is from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Liberation is costly. Even after the Lord had delivered the Israelites from Egypt, they had to travel through the desert. They had to bear the responsibilities and difficulties of freedom. There was starvation and thirst, and they kept complaining. They complained that their diet was monotonous, and what is worse, many of them preferred the days of bondage in the flesh pots of Egypt. We must remember that liberation is costly. It needs unity. We must hold hands and refuse to be divided. The ruler always wants to divide and rule. We must know that before we reach our promised land, there will be detentions without trial. There will be division. There will be treachery and disloyalty. We must be ready. Some of us will not see the day of our liberation physically, but these people will have contributed to the struggle. Let us be united. Let us be filled with hope. Let us be those who respect one another. And this is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, what does this mean in a great period of history? It means that we've got to stay together and maintain unity. You know, whenever Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had a favorite formula for doing it. What was that? He kept the slaves fighting among themselves. But whenever the slaves got together, something happens in Pharaoh's court, and he could not hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. Now let us maintain unity. The Midrash tells us that when the children of Israel came to the edge of the sea with the armies of Pharaoh in pursuit, the water first refused to part. It was not until the first Jews had stepped into the sea and the waters reached their necks that the sea parted, and the children of Israel passed safely through on dry land. Now, as then, redemption cannot come unless we take the first step.
Explanation of our Seder symbols: Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Rabban Gamliel used to say, whoever does not consider well the meaning of these three, Pesach, Matzah, and Maror, has not fulfilled the purpose of the Seder. The Pesach, shank bone, chicken bone in this case, is a reminder of God's instruction to the Jews to sacrifice a lamb and mark their doorposts with the blood, an indication to the angel of death to pass over their houses and spare their firstborn sons. Matzah. Matzah was meant to recall the dough prepared in haste by the children of Israel that did not have time to rise before the final act of deliverance. From Exodus 12. And they baked unleavened cakes of dough since they had been driven out of Egypt and could not delay, nor had they prepared provisions for themselves. To the driven of the earth we link ourselves today as we fulfill the commandments from Deuteronomy 16. For 7 days you shall eat matzah, that you may remember your departure from Egypt as long as you live. Maror, the bitter herbs. We eat maror to remind us of how the Egyptians embittered the lives of our ancestors. Today as well, wherever slavery or oppression of any sort remains, we taste its bitterness.
The blessing of the food. We link ourselves with our brothers and sisters in this world who are not yet free as we fulfill the commandments to eat matzah, the bread of affliction. From Deuteronomy 16:3. You should not eat anything leavened with it. For 7 days thereafter you shall eat unleavened bread, the bread of affliction. For you departed from the land of Egypt hurriedly, so that you may remember the day of your departure from the land of Egypt all the days of your life.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We praise you, God, sovereign of existence, who brings forth bread from the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. We praise you, God, sovereign of existence, who hallows our lives with commandments, who has commanded us regarding the eating of matzah. Sorry.
It's always dry.
My mother's always called it the crummy week because of all the crumb.
Yep.
All right. I'm putting the matzah with the bitter herbs. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror. We praise you, God, sovereign of existence, who hallows our lives through commandments, who has commanded us regarding the eating of maror. Okay. Tonight, as we taste the bitter herbs, we share in the bitterness and disappointment of the lives of our forebears. We recognize the bitter consequences of exploitation and repression, the loss of lives, and the waste of human potential. And now we approach the meal, a kind of intermission in the narrative. We begin with the charoset, a mixture of apples, nuts, wine, spices, made into a paste. Its texture symbolizes the mortar that our ancestors used to build Pharaoh's pyramids. Its sweetness is symbolic of the blessings of freedom. Preserving a bond with the observance of our ancestors, we follow the practice of Hillel from the time when the temple stood. He combined matzah and maror and ate them together so that he might observe the precept handed down to him by his parents before him from Numbers 9. They shall eat the paschal lamb with matzah and maror together. Together, they shall be the matzah of freedom and the maror of slavery. In the time of freedom, there is knowledge of servitude, and in the time of bondage, there is hope for redemption. I'll eat it again. If we were all together, which would be lovely, we'd be eating a meal right now, having matzo ball soup and probably chicken. That's at least what my family always eats on Passover. And lots of talk and crumbs all over the table and a whole lot of interaction. And the Seders, when people ask questions, weird questions, and the did you knows and what do you think ofs, and everyone engages from the littlest to the biggest, from the youngest to the oldest. So pretend, everyone, that this is what we're doing. Okay. Was that good? It was yummy? It was yummy.
It was good. It was excellent.
Because now we conclude the service. Its rites observed in full, its purposes revealed.
This privilege we share will ever be renewed until God's plan is known in full and God's highest blessing sealed. Peace. Peace for us, peace for everyone. For all people, there is our hope. Next year, may all be free.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May Adonai bless you and protect you.
Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'yechunecha.
May Adonai show you favor and be gracious unto you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yisem lecha shalom.
May Adonai show you kindness and give you peace.
Amen.
Amen.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Rabbi Deb and I both made comments that Rabbi White was such a instrumental figure in both of our lives in so many ways. I just feel his spirit very present among us and among both of our communities. So I just, when Christina was singing again, I could just see him just with his eyes closed, just enjoying the music. So I just truly am glad that he years ago said, "Hey, Michael, why don't we do the Seder together? We can do it. I have a great Haggadah we can use." So special thanks to those you don't see here. Dave, our technician of all this magic, and to Rabbi Debbie and Reverend Sam and Christina. Thank you guys, and thanks to all who joined us. This has just been a wonderful, wonderful occasion for us to celebrate Seder together as we begin the special next 2 weeks of Passover and of Easter.
Thank you all so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for this time together.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It was really lovely. Big hugs to everyone.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.
Good night.
And you all be well. This is a wonderful tradition. I'm glad we could do it in spite of having to do it virtually. So
Yes, indeed.
Maybe next year.
maybe next year we can actually be in person again. That would be wonderful.
Maybe next year, Jerusalem.
Exactly.
God willing, maybe we could do it in St. Martin's.
I'll take St. Martin's.
A little less plane ticket.